Principal Axe stared at the application form floating on the holographic screen, his three eyes blinking in sequence as he read it again. The document was simple enough, but its implications were making his pale blue skin turn a worried shade of gray. "A human," he muttered, antenna twitching nervously. "They want to send us a human." The Galactic Academy of Advanced Sciences had always prided itself on being the most prestigious educational institution in the third spiral arm. For centuries, they had accepted students from thousands of worlds, but never from Earth. Never a Deathworlder. The staff meeting that afternoon was more heated than any in recent memory. Teachers gathered in the reinforced conference room, their voices mixing into a concerned chorus of clicks, whistles, and translated speech. "Their bones are made of calcium," Professor Lin exclaimed, waving her tentacles in alarm. "The same material they use to build their primitive structures. How can we ensure the safety of our other students?" Dr. Mel, the school physician, floated toward the center of the room, her gas-filled body glowing with excited patterns. "That's not even the most concerning part," she said. "They have iron in their blood. Their bodies literally rust to stay alive." Principal Axe raised all four of his arms, calling for silence. "The Galactic Council has approved this exchange program," he said firmly. "The human student, Tom, will arrive tomorrow. We must be prepared." That night, maintenance robots worked overtime. They reinforced the chairs in every classroom with metals that could support 5 times the weight necessary for normal students. The cafeteria installed a separate food processing unit capable of handling Earth-based nutrients. Even the air filtration system was upgraded to deal with the higher oxygen requirements of their new student. The next morning, Tom stepped off the transport ship and into galactic history. He stood shorter than many had feared, only about 2 standard units tall, with a simple environmental suit that seemed surprisingly basic compared to the elaborate life support systems used by many species. "Hello," he said, his translator converting his words into standard galactic basic. "Thank you for accepting me into your school." The welcoming committee, standing safely behind a protective barrier, watched in fascination as he actually walked on 2 legs, across the arrival bay. His movements were smooth and controlled, nothing like the deadly predator they had imagined. "Welcome to the Galactic Academy," Principal Axe said through his translator, trying to keep his antenna from twitching too obviously. "We have prepared special accommodations for your unique needs." Tom looked around at the reinforced walls, the emergency containment fields, and the medical team standing by with specialized equipment. A small smile crossed his face, but he said nothing about the obvious precautions. The other students, watching from various safe vantage points, whispered among themselves. Some used their sensory appendages to take readings from a distance, while others quickly moved away when Tom looked in their direction. "Your first class will be basic xenobiology," Principal Axe explained, leading the way while maintaining what he considered a safe distance. "We've modified the classroom to accommodate your species requirements." As they walked through the halls, Tom noticed how other students pressed themselves against the walls to avoid coming too close. Their reactions ranged from curious to terrified, but none seemed willing to be within 5 steps of him. The only one who showed any real interest was a young mistweaver named Ray, who floated nearby in their characteristic cloud form, studying Tom with obvious fascination rather than fear. "Is it true that humans come from a planet with constant meteorological warfare?" Ray asked, their gaseous form swirling with curiosity. "You mean the weather?" Tom replied with a gentle laugh. "We just call it rain." Principal Axe watched the interaction carefully, ready to activate the emergency containment field at the first sign of trouble. But as he observed the simple exchange between the human and the mistweaver, he felt a tiny spark of hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, this experiment wouldn't end in disaster. As Tom took his seat in the reinforced chair for his first class, the whole school held its breath, wondering what surprises this Deathworlder would bring to their orderly institution. The first day of the most ambitious cultural exchange program in galactic history had begun, and nothing would ever be quite the same again. The school's testing chamber hummed with nervous energy as Tom stood in the center of the reinforced assessment area. It was time for the mandatory physical evaluation, and nearly half the school had found excuses to be in the observation deck. Dr. Mel floated nearby in her containment sphere, her gaseous form swirling with professional interest. "We'll start with basic mobility tests," she announced, her translator making slight chirping sounds. "Please lift the level 1 weight cube." Tom walked over to the shimmering blue cube. The warning signs around it clearly marked it as a 100 standard unit mass, meant for testing the strongest Class 3 gravity species. The watching crowd of students murmured in concern. "Are you sure?" Tom asked politely. "This seems a bit light." Before Dr. Mel could respond, Tom picked up the cube with one hand. The sensor arrays let out a series of alarmed beeps, and several students immediately backed away from the viewing windows. "Fascinating." Dr. Mel's patterns flashed rapidly. "Please proceed to the reaction time test." The test chamber produced a series of holographic targets that moved at increasing speeds. Tom's movements, while not the fastest the school had seen, showed a disturbing efficiency. He didn't waste energy with elaborate motions like many species. Each movement was direct, precise, and somehow predatory. "Now for endurance testing," Dr. Mel announced, trying to keep her gas form from showing too much excitement. "Please maintain moderate physical activity until you feel tired." 2 hours later, Tom was still jogging steadily on the reinforced track. He had barely broken a sweat, while the observation deck had filled with even more spectators. The monitoring equipment, designed for standard assessment periods of 10 minutes, had already filled its databanks and started overwriting old files. Should we stop him?" whispered a junior administrator to Principal Axe. "Can we stop him?" Another teacher clicked nervously. Ray, the Mistweaver student who had shown interest the day before, drifted closer to the viewing window. "He's not even using his full respiratory capacity," they observed. "Humans must have incredible stamina." Finally, Dr. Mel called an end to the test, more for the sake of the overwhelmed monitoring equipment than any signs of fatigue from Tom. "Next, we'll test your environmental adaptability," she said, her patterns showing a mix of fear and scientific curiosity. "The chamber will simulate various conditions." The chamber dropped to near freezing temperatures. Tom simply zipped up his light jacket. They raised the temperature to levels uncomfortable for most species. Tom removed his jacket and continued standing normally. They increased the gravity by 20%. He didn't seem to notice. They decreased it by 30%. He just smiled and did a small hop to test it. "Remarkable." Dr. Mel's swirling form was practically spinning with excitement. "Your species appears to have an extraordinary range of environmental tolerance." "Well, Earth has a lot of different environments," Tom explained. "We're used to adapting." The final test involved basic strength measurements. Tom accidentally broke 3 testing machines before they brought out the heavy-duty equipment meant for maintenance robots. Even then, his results went well beyond their predicted ranges. As the assessment concluded, the watching crowd had grown eerily quiet. The data displayed on the floating screens told a story that none of them could quite believe. This human, this supposedly primitive Deathworlder, had casually outperformed most of their strength testing equipment, while barely showing signs of exertion. "Thank you for your cooperation," Dr. Mel said, her gas form somewhat more distant now. "This has been enlightening." As Tom left the testing chamber, the crowd of students parted before him like a magnetic field splitting around a charged particle. Only Ray remained close, their misty forms swirling with undisguised curiosity. "That was impressive," Ray said, floating alongside Tom. "Though I think you scared half the school." Tom shrugged. "I didn't even get to show them my talent for juggling," he joked, but seeing several nearby students flinch at his quick hand movement, he decided that perhaps juggling demonstrations could wait for another day. Principal Axe, watching from his office through multiple security feeds, began drafting an urgent message to the school board. They were going to need much stronger testing equipment, and perhaps a complete revision of their understanding of what a primitive species could do. Professor Lin nervously arranged her tentacles as Tom entered the chemistry lab. After yesterday's physical assessment results, the school had been buzzing with discussions about human capabilities. Now it was time for Tom's first practical chemistry lesson. Today, we will be working with basic corrosive compounds, Professor Lin announced, her translator giving a slight tremor. Please put on your protective suits before approaching the containment units. The other students quickly encased themselves in protective bubbles and force fields. Tom simply pulled on a pair of rubber gloves from his backpack. Student Tom. Professor Lin waved a concerned tentacle. You'll need full protection for this exercise. These substances can dissolve organic matter. Tom looked at the warning labels on the containers. Oh, this is just hydrochloric acid. We used to work with this in my old school's lab. These gloves should be fine. The entire class froze. Even Ray, who had been bravely floating closer to Tom these days, drifted back a few feet. You handled molecular acid in your previous education facility. Professor Lin's color shifted to a pale green of disbelief. Sure, Earth's oceans are actually more acidic than this solution, Tom explained, carefully measuring the liquid. And human stomachs produce something similar to help digest food. A student in the back promptly fainted, their anti-gravity stabilizers barely catching them before they hit the floor. The practical work began, with Tom calmly handling substances that the other students treated like explosive materials. His technique was precise, if a bit primitive by galactic standards. He didn't use the standard molecular manipulators, preferring to work directly with the tools. Everything was going smoothly until Tom accidentally splashed a drop of solution on his hand. The class erupted in panic. 3 students activated their emergency beacons. Someone hit the hazard alarm. Everyone calm down, Tom said, wiping his hand on his lab coat. It's fine. See, not even a burn. Professor Lin rushed over with a medical scanner, her tentacles trembling. The readings made her pause. Your epidermis, it's naturally acid-resistant. Well, not completely, Tom admitted, but we can handle a lot more than you'd expect. Our cells have pretty good repair mechanisms. The real surprise came during the neutralization experiments. When a particularly dangerous compound needed to be neutralized, Tom did something that would be remembered in school legend for years to come. He spat on it. The lab's eye screamed, initiating emergency protocols. Wait. Tom called out as force fields began dropping around the room. Look at the readings. Professor Lin, who had been reaching for the emergency evacuation switch, paused. The dangerous compound was indeed being neutralized. She quickly ran an analysis. This is impossible, she whispered. Your oral secretions contain enzymes that break down the molecular structure. You're a walking neutralization agent. Ray, who had ventured closer again, swirled in amazement. So humans are basically walking chemistry labs. That's one way to put it, Tom laughed. We're pretty good at breaking things down. It helps us eat such a wide variety of foods. Professor Lin spent the rest of the class frantically taking notes and running analyses on the properties of human saliva, completely forgetting her earlier fear of the Deathworlder. The scientific implications were too fascinating to ignore. As the students filed out after class, many gave Tom a wider berth than before. Not because they feared his strength now, but because they'd learned he was basically a walking container of acid and enzymes. You know, Ray commented as they floated beside Tom in the hallway, I think you just became the first student to ever scare Professor Lin and impress her at the same time. Tom smiled. Wait until they learn about our immune systems, he whispered, causing nearby students to hurry away even faster. Principal Axe, reviewing the day's incident reports, added yet another note to his growing file. Humans, natural walking hazardous material handlers. Potential career opportunities in waste management and dangerous substance control. The school cafeteria was always a fascinating display of galactic diversity. Some students absorbed nutrients through their skin, others photosynthesized under special lights, and a few simply absorbed energy directly from the school's power grid. But nothing had prepared them for human eating habits. Tom sat down at an empty table, his lunchbox making the soft thud on the reinforced surface. Ray, now somewhat used to their human friend's strange ways, floated nearby with their own nutrient mist dispenser. "What's that smell?" Ray asked, their gaseous forms swirling with curiosity. "Just my lunch," Tom replied, opening his container. "Mom packed my favorite, spicy chicken curry with rice." The word spicy caught the attention of several nearby students. Their universal translators all gave the same warning. Caution. Term refers to chemical irritants consumed for pleasure. A small crowd began to gather at a safe distance, watching in horrified fascination as Tom took out his food. The steam rising from the curry carried tiny particles of capsaicin through the air, causing several sensitive students to activate their emergency filters. "You're going to eat something that produces defense chemicals?" asked a crystalline student, their facets flickering with concern. "It's not that hot," Tom said, taking a big bite. "Mom actually made it mild since I'm at school." The cafeteria's atmospheric sensors suddenly began flashing warnings about detected irritants. A safety drone zoomed over, scanning Tom's food with increasing urgency. "Alert. DETCTEDCUBs classified as chemical deterrent," the drone announced. "Recommended acetylene. Immediate containment." "Oh, come on," Tom sighed, quickly showing his Earth species meal permit. "It's just a little curry. The peppers are perfectly safe for humans." Principal Axe, who had rushed to the cafeteria after the alert, watched in amazement as Tom continued eating what the school's sensors classified as a mild chemical weapon. "Fascinating," Dr. Mel said, having also hurried over to observe. "The human is deliberately ingesting capsaicin compounds for enjoyment." The situation got even more interesting when Tom pulled out a small bottle of hot sauce. "Sometimes the curry needs an extra kick," he explained, adding several drops to his food. The safety drone nearly short-circuited trying to classify the new threat level. 3 more students activated their emergency filters, and one crystalline being began vibrating in distress. "Would anyone like to try some?" Tom offered, holding out a small portion. The entire cafeteria went silent. Even Ray, the bravest of Tom's new acquaintances, drifted back slightly. "I'll try," came an unexpected voice. Everyone turned to see Professor Lin, who had been studying human biology since the chemistry class incident. In the name of science, of course. With careful safety protocols in place, Professor Lin used one of her smaller tentacles to taste a tiny amount of curry. The reaction was immediate. Her color changed through 7 different shades, her tentacles curled up, and her translator made a series of unprecedented sounds. "Water," she signaled frantically. "Need water." "Oh, water actually makes it worse," Tom said quickly. "Here, have some milk instead." As Professor Lin recovered with the help of the dairy product, the watching crowd had grown even larger. The incident was already being recorded in the school's scientific database. Humans can not only withstand chemical irritants, but actively seek them out for pleasure. "You know what's really going to blow their minds?" Tom whispered to Ray. "Wait until they see what happens when I eat the chocolate bar for dessert." "What's chocolate?" Ray asked innocently. "Oh, just a mild toxin that humans eat for fun," Tom replied with a grin, causing nearby students to back away even further. Principal Axe, watching from a safe distance, added another note to his ever-growing file on human capabilities. Dietary habits suggest possible immunity to most known toxic substances, potential applications in hazardous waste consumption. Also, review cafeteria safety protocols immediately. The annual Interspecies sports competition was a proud tradition at the Galactic Academy. Each species competed in events suited to their unique abilities. Anti-gravity races for the floaters, crystal growing speed trials for the mineral-based students, and energy pulse competitions for the plasma beings. "Are you sure you want to participate?" Ray asked, floating anxiously beside Tom. "Most species only join one event that matches their biology." Tom grinned as he stretched his muscles. "I signed up for 5 events. Might as well show everyone what humans can do." Principal Axe nearly dropped his data pad when he saw the registration list. Tom had entered the endurance race, strength challenge, agility course, climbing competition, and, most surprisingly, the aquatic mobility event. He knows he can't generate force fields or anti-gravity, right? One of the teachers clicked nervously. The first event was the endurance race. While other species used hover units or rolling mechanisms, Tom simply started running. After the first hour, when most competitors had tired or overheated, he kept going. By hour 2, even the monitoring drones were getting bored. "How is he still moving?" Professor Lin asked Dr. Mel, who was frantically taking readings. "Apparently, humans evolved as persistence hunters," Dr. Mel explained, her gaseous form swirling with excitement. "They would chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion." Several nearby students quickly backed away from the viewing area. The strength challenge brought more surprises. While Tom couldn't match the raw power of the gravity world species, his versatile movements and endurance let him outlast most competitors. The judges had to create a new scoring category just to account for his unique approach. "Did you see that?" Ray buzzed excitedly to a group of students. He lifted the weight block and just kept holding it. No anti-gravity assists, no force fields, just pure physical strength. The agility course revealed another shocking human trait. Tom's ability to quickly change direction and maintain balance on 2 legs proved surprisingly effective. He didn't have the floating grace of the gas-based species or the fluid movement of the liquid beings, but his performance showed a practical efficiency that was somehow more unsettling. "Their species evolved as climbers too," Principal Axe muttered in disbelief as Tom scaled the vertical challenge wall using just his hands and feet. No suction pads, no gravity manipulation, just direct physical contact with the surface. But the real shock came during the aquatic mobility event. Many expected Tom to use some kind of technology to compete. Instead, he just jumped into the water and started swimming. "He's moving through liquid, without propulsion technology," a crystalline student chimed in amazement. "And he's holding his breath," another added. "How is he not dying?" Ray, who had been researching human capabilities, proudly explained to anyone who would listen. "Humans evolved from aquatic ancestors. They can naturally move through water and hold their breath for minutes at a time." By the end of the day, the school's understanding of human physical capabilities had been completely rewritten. Tom hadn't won every event, but his ability to competently compete in so many different challenges had left everyone stunned. "So let me understand this correctly," Principal Axe said during the closing ceremony. "Your species can run long distances, lift heavy weights, climb vertical surfaces, swim through liquids, and do all this without any technological assistance." "Well, yeah," Tom shrugged. "We're pretty adaptable. Though I wish I could float like Ray or grow crystals like Lee. That would be cool." As the students left the sports field, the conversations had shifted from fear of the dangerous Deathworlder to amazement at human adaptability. Even the most skeptical teachers had to admit that perhaps being a primitive species had its advantages. "You know what's really impressive?" Ray commented as they left. "You did all that while under higher gravity than your home world." Tom smiled. "Wait until they discover human sports like parkour or mixed martial arts." Principal Axe, overhearing this, quickly made a note to research these terms and possibly update the school's insurance policy. It started as a normal day in the Advanced Engineering Lab. Students from various species were working on their gravity manipulation projects when something went wrong. Very wrong. The first warning came when the lab's containment field flickered. Then the gravity generators started to overload. Within seconds, alarms were blaring throughout the school. Critical failure imminent. The AI system announced, Hazardous materials, DTTSTTD, all students EVAQ8, INMNEDA. Hello. Tom was in the hallway with Ray when the emergency lights started flashing. Through the lab's transparent walls, they could see students panicking as multiple systems failed simultaneously. The containment field is collapsing. Professor Lin's tentacles were waving in alarm, and the backup systems aren't responding. Inside the lab, 3 crystalline students were trapped behind a fallen piece of equipment. The rising temperature from the malfunctioning gravity generator was causing toxic fumes to leak from damaged containers. The emergency response team is 4 minutes away. Principal X announced, his antenna twitching with stress. The environmental hazards are too severe for our safety drones. Without hesitation, Tom ran toward the lab entrance. Stop, Dr. Mel called out. The atmosphere in there is becoming toxic, and the gravity fluctuations could crush you. Humans are tougher than you think, Tom said, pulling off his school jacket. And those students need help now. Before anyone could stop him, Tom wrapped his jacket around his face as a makeshift filter and entered the lab. The gravity was fluctuating wildly. One moment he felt nearly weightless. The next he was being pressed down with double force. Tom, Ray called after him, their gaseous form unable to enter the contaminated space. Be careful. The toxic fumes were visible now, a greenish mist that made the air shimmer. Tom moved through it. His human respiratory system evolved to handle Earth's various atmospheric conditions, working overtime to filter the air. Coming to help, he called to the trapped students, stay calm. The gravity shifted again, making every step a challenge. But Tom's muscles, evolved under Earth's heavy gravity, adapted to the changing conditions. He reached the fallen equipment and braced himself. This is impossible, Professor Lin exclaimed, watching through the windows. The temperature in there is approaching levels that should denature protein structures. But Tom's body, used to handling everything from freezing winters to scorching summers, kept functioning. With a grunt of effort, he lifted the fallen equipment. The trapped students quickly scrambled to safety. Head for the door, Tom shouted, holding the heavy piece up. I'll be right behind you. As the students escaped, a new alarm sounded. The gravity generator was reaching critical levels. Tom dropped the equipment and sprinted for the exit, his powerful legs pushing against the fluctuating gravity fields. He dove through the doorway just as the containment systems finally engaged, sealing off the lab. Tom rolled to his feet, coughing but otherwise appearing unharmed. Dr. Mel rushed over with medical scanners. Impossible. You have minor irritation to your lungs, slight muscle strain, and elevated adrenaline levels. But you're basically fine. Deathworlder, remember? Tom managed to grin between coughs. We're built to handle tough situations. The rescued students, safely being treated by medical staff, were looking at Tom with new understanding. This wasn't the dangerous predator they had feared. This was a protector. You risked your life, Ray said, floating closer. Why? Because they needed help, Tom replied simply. Humans might be tough, but we also care about others. That's just as important as being strong. Principal Axe, watching the scene unfold, realized something important. Perhaps they had been wrong to focus only on the physical dangers of having a Deathworlder in their school. They had overlooked something far more significant, the human capacity for self-sacrifice and protection of others. Well, he announced, his translator struggling to convey his mix of emotions, I believe we need to update our emergency response protocols, and perhaps our understanding of human nature as well. The school board meeting room was packed. Representatives from 12 different galactic education councils had arrived to discuss the human situation at the Galactic Academy. After the recent events, news had spread fast across the education sector. Principal Axe stood before the assembled officials, his antenna held high with newfound confidence. Behind him, a series of holographic displays showed footage from the past few days. Tom's physical assessment, the chemistry class discovery, the lunch incident, the sports competition, and finally, the emergency rescue. Distinguished council members, Principal Axe began. When we first accepted a human student, we thought we were taking a dangerous risk. We were wrong. We weren't taking a risk. We were discovering an opportunity. The footage showed Tom helping a group of younger students understand their gravity physics homework, his simple explanations making complex concepts clear. Yes, humans are physically strong, Professor Lin added, her tentacles moving excitedly. But their true strength lies in their adaptability. They can survive in environments that would kill most species, true, but they also thrive in them. Dr. Mel floated forward, her gaseous form displaying patterns of scientific enthusiasm. Their biology is fascinating. They can eat foods that would poison others, neutralize dangerous compounds, and their healing abilities are remarkable. Tom's minor injuries from the lab incident healed in just days. Ray, invited as a student representative, spoke next. At first, everyone was scared of having a Deathworlder here. But Tom showed us that being tough doesn't mean being dangerous. Humans use their strength to help others. The council members murmured among themselves, their various appendages and sensory organs showing signs of intense interest. We've received applications from 17 other human students, Principal Axe continued, and inquiries from over 50 schools across the galaxy about starting their own human exchange programs. A crystalline council member chimed in concern. But the safety protocols, the special facilities, are largely unnecessary, Principal Axe replied. We've learned that humans don't need reinforced furniture or special containment fields. They're far more adaptable than we imagined. What they need is opportunity. The meeting room doors opened, and Tom walked in. The council members, despite their initial flinch, remained in place. Progress, indeed. Council members, Tom said politely. I know my presence here started as an experiment, but I hope it's shown that humans and galactic society can learn a lot from each other. We might be Deathworlders, but we're also explorers, protectors, and friends. Ray floated closer to Tom. Before Tom came, I never knew someone could be strong and gentle at the same time. Humans aren't just surviving their harsh world, they're making the whole galaxy a better place. The council deliberated briefly before reaching a unanimous decision. The human exchange program would not only continue but expand. The Galactic Academy would become a model for human integration into galactic education. There is one small concern, a council member noted. We've heard rumors about human sports, something called parkour and mixed martial arts. Tom tried not to smile. Maybe we should save those demonstrations for next semester. As the meeting concluded, Principal Axe made one final note in the now famous human integration file. Initial hypothesis: Deathworlders are dangerous. Revised conclusion: humans are not simply Deathworlders. They are proof that strength and compassion can evolve together. Recommendation: expand program immediately. Also, update insurance policy. Just in case. Outside the meeting room, students of various species gathered around Tom and Ray, asking questions about Earth and humans. The fear was gone, replaced by genuine curiosity and friendship. So Ray swirled playfully, ready to help the next batch of human students settle in. Tom grinned. Absolutely. Though maybe we should warn the chemistry department about humans sneezing first. The sound of alien laughter echoed through the halls of the Galactic Academy, marking the beginning of a new era in galactic education, one where being a Deathworlder wasn't a source of fear, but a reason for celebration.